Hey, let's run a few code experiments now for a better understanding of functions. Specifically, you want to understand the difference between function definitions and function calls. And that is what the first experiment is about, the difference between function calls and definitions. So if I remove all these calls here and I just leave the function there and I run the code, nothing will be returned as an output. Well, you could say there's no print function here, that's why we didn't get any outputs. But I can provide a print function here. Let's say, hey, and I run the code, again, no output. So why is that? Well, that's because this is just a recipe of the process. If we wanted to use our coffee making example again, so when you go to order a coffee in a bar and you go to the bartender and you ask them, I want a coffee, they have a recipe in mind, maybe in their mind, maybe they have written it somewhere. So the recipe is the function definition, that's the function definition. The recipe itself has to be executed by someone, the bartender. So the function also has to be executed in order to get the output. And we execute the function like this. So greet. So that's the variable and that's the value. So at this point, this will be equal to hello with the first letter capitalized. But if we run this again, what we get is hey, so the function was called and that proves it. We get hey, so the function was called because this was executed. That's how we know the function was called. We don't get hello printed out because we simply got hello and we stored it in greeting. So if we want hello to be printed out, we say print greeting. You run again the code and then you get hey and also hello. So it's very important to realize that the function call is equal to a value. The value of that is always whatever is returned in here. So it could be a string, it could be a number, it could be any object that the function returns. So I hope that helps you understand the difference between the function definition and the function call. Now the next experiment. It is about the return statement. So try to remove that line and print out the code. This is what we get this time. Hey and none. So again, the interpreter goes and executes the blueprint. It doesn't do anything. It just looks at the recipe, and then you execute the recipe here. But the problem is that this time the recipe has not instructed what to return. So the coffee was prepared, but the recipe didn't say, oh, give that coffee to the client. And when that doesn't happen, implicitly, the function definition will return a non-object. So just like we have integers, strings, we also have this special object called none. None is basically to represent a nothing. So in Python, you can actually, in the console, you can just say none, so that's recognized as a value. So it's not a string, it doesn't have quotes, so this would be different from that. That is a string, that is a special object. So that here is equivalent of having return none. If we run this, we're going to get the same error. Sorry, the same outputs, it's not an error. The same hey and none. So you normally want to return something here. In this case is new message. Some people, what they will do, especially beginners, they will confuse print with return. So instead of returning something, they will say print new message. And let's see what we get this time. So, this is what happens. The interpreter reads the recipe and then it executes the recipe. So message is associated to the hello string, and then new message is associated to hello with the first letter capitalized. So far so good. Then print hey, so this is printed out in here. Then print message. Message is printed out, hello. You see with the letter capitalized, so far so good. And then none is printed out. Why is none printed out? Well, because I just told you that when you don't have that return statement, the function will always return none. So implicitly the function again is doing return none. That's why we get none here. So in other words, greet will be equal to none to that object. And that's why when you print here, we are printing the none object, the object that the function greet returns. So you don't want to confuse print with return. Always try to return the output instead of printing it out. So if I run the script now, we get the correct expected output. Hey, hey, printed out by this, and hello by that. So why is it important to return and not print? Well, because perhaps you want to do something to that value, which is hello. Perhaps you want to print out the length of hello. So the length would be len greeting. You run this and you get 5. But if you had print here, see what you get now? It's an error because you're trying to apply len to none, to the non-type object. And that gives an error because the non-object doesn't have a length, doesn't have characters like a string has or a list has. So again, I cannot stress it enough that you should return instead of printing. So this was about functions for this code experiments for today. Thanks a lot. See you.